Radio.
All right, good morning, everybody. We are off and rolling here on a Tuesday. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, and I think we have everyone back today. I think. Not all in studio. Of course, I had to mess that one up, but I think we have everyone back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tisson with you here. Jacob, welcome back. You finally kicked that fever, huh?
Yeah. Kick the fever. Can't get these two sick, so I figured I'd come back to work. I'm sitting at about, I'd say, 72%.
Okay.
Still inching my way up towards 100, battling off the last few remnants. I would recommend to everyone, don't get what I got.
Yeah.
That was absolute hell. I felt like I was dying for 5 days, but it's good to be back.
If this was a political show, I'd say with a smirk on my face, vaxxed. But it's not a political show, so I'll keep my mouth shut.
I think
whoa.
the chat knows my vax status.
We could talk politics. No smirking. No smirking.
No
The
smirking.
politics line, smirking is where we draw the line on this show. But I don't think we draw the line at politics. I think we had a congressman on the show yesterday, correct?
That was a very cool interview. Yes.
Yeah, I can't believe I missed that either.
That's your guy. That's your guy.
All right, but Casey, good morning. How are we?
Good. Woke up this morning and there was baseball played today. I checked the score. Oh, poor Cubbies.
Casey.
Poor Cubbies.
Oh, I didn't. I'll tell you what. If you were to bet on who made fun of the Cubs first,
Casey
certainly
was plus 1,000.
Casey was dead last in that
wow,
one.
that were ox.
Oh no, Casey.
There was also as I was looking for the score, I looked on ESPN, and one of the first headlines I see is, I didn't know Kyle Tucker spoke why the silent assassin could be the MLB's next $400 million star.
Oh.
If he makes $400 million, he won't be playing for the Cubs.
That's two.
But Casey from the top rope to kick the show off today. Casey's had some memorable opens on the show. None better, and I think Jacob might remember this. The Pete Rose.
Yes. That was so funny.
What did he say?
I saved that one. He didn't mean to sound so just I don't know. It was so funny.
Kinner buried him too.
Yeah, Pete Rose had just passed away, and Casey, it's a somber day. It's sad that Pete Rose passed away, but not as sad as the Reds' performance yesterday or something. It was something along. I'm like, holy crap!
Funny.
All right, but we got a lot to get into here today. Obviously, yesterday a lot of time spent on the reaction to the bracket that was revealed on Sunday, and then the Bengals finally getting those deals done with Tee Higgins and, of course, Jamar Chase. Jake has been off for a bit, so we'll get his reaction to that and then dive into his reaction to that. But now how does that impact the Bengals moving forward? How is it going to impact how they spend money moving forward, how they put the rest of this roster together? We'll get to all of that coming up around the corner. The NCAA tournament technically tips off tonight. When you guys fill out your brackets, is Thursday the deadline for you before noon, or is it before the first games tip off tonight?
First game.
No.
First game.
Yeah, it's the first game tonight.
Yeah. I'm with you.
My brackets, I was having this debate with my friends yesterday. My friends were saying, Elliot, stop asking us to finish our brackets and pay you for the bracket pool. Stop. Tournament doesn't start till Thursday. No. Tournament starts Tuesday night. That's when the real games are played. And I don't think once I've started filling out brackets when I was 10 years old. In my 15 years of filling out brackets, never once have I waited until Thursday to complete a bracket. Never once. Not one time. It is done always Sunday night. Probably 5 minutes after the selection.
Yeah. How many do you make?
This is a good point. I forget who said it on the March Madness show of how many he makes. And he said 3 of them is a good amount. You do one for your brain, one for your heart, and you do one quick one right after the selection show.
I don't hate that.
I think 3 is a good number. For me, I always do the random. I always do a heads or tails one. So I always flip a coin for a bracket just to see. Do they still do the $1 million thing? If you win, if perfect bracket, you get $1 million.
You have to enter it.
Okay, well, I got to enter one of mine for the perfect thing still. And then I'll always do one where I'm just cheering for my teams, but unfortunately my teams just don't play in that tournament.
Well, I'm sure there's a wonderful ESPN Tournament Challenge equivalent for the crown.
Nice.
You see what we're playing?
DePaul.
Yeah, DePaul. April Fool's Day.
I think Chris Holtman.
Because it's a joke.
I love that tournament is after the transfer portal.
Yeah. What a clown show is being operated there. But then I do I probably do 5 brackets. I probably do 5 brackets to be short.
Well, we'll stay on this. We'll do headlines next segment. Why not? We'll just push it back a segment because we're already diving into this. But no, I'm glad you bring that up because I'm in a few pools as well, and it's amazing how many of my buddies. Like I texted my buddy, I said, "Hey, usually you send this out by now." He goes, "Oh, we're good. We have till Thursday." And I'm like, "Well, no, and then I'm the wrong one in my group of friends because they all view Thursday as the start of the tournament, and I'm like, but there's like 12 seeds and 11 seeds playing. Like I could see if the first four was just all 16 seeds, I could see why there wouldn't be a lot of urgency to get it turned in before Tuesday night. But like you have North Carolina playing tonight. North Carolina is capable of winning a few games in this tournament, whether they deserve to be in or not. That was the big debate, of course, coming out of the weekend. But I agree with you. I'm surprised. I thought there'd be more pushback on this, but I do believe they should be filled out before the start of the tournament tonight. Again, you got North Carolina, San Diego State tonight. Tomorrow you have Xavier, going up against Texas. I don't know how you could look at a Xavier-Texas matchup or a North Carolina-San Diego State matchup and say, yeah, those aren't really a part of the tournament. They're a part of the tournament. They got an at-large bid. They are in the tournament. I don't know why people say the first four is not the NCAA tournament. It drives me nuts.
No, it absolutely is. They expanded it, and that's what you get.
When you pick that team, you get both, though.
Correct. But I have an idea, for example, I have Xavier or Texas beating Illinois, no matter who wins.
Okay.
I have Xavier or Texas just winning that game.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter to me at all who wins. I'm going to have the winner beat Illinois. That's how my brain works for this.
It's also one of the rules, right? You have to have a first four-team win.
Yes, usually
at least one.
Usually, I put one on there. I put one on there because I feel like they get hot.
I think one of them almost always advances.
Yeah, I feel like almost every time.
So, and then the other thing we get, and again, because I'm a fan and cover a mid-major team, when a mid-major team like a Wright State or like the teams tonight that are in there, like St. Francis and Alabama State, they're 16 seeds, 16 versus 16. Whoever wins tonight, that will count as an NCAA tournament win. The coaches of these teams will have a NCAA tournament win on their resume. One of these two schools will, of course, get to add to the history books and say, hey, we got our first NCAA tournament win in program history at the first four in Dayton, Ohio in 2025, yada, yada. 16 versus 16, these count as real tournament wins in your eyes, correct? Is there any asterisk?
Not at all for me. Not even a little bit. Not even the slightest. I think it's absolutely disgusting they make conference champions play in the first four. I think it means it takes away from the tournament. If you win your conference, you should have the experience of playing on Thursday or Friday of the NCAA tournament. I think that's point blank period. Only at-large bids should be playing in the first four. I think there's a clear difference between being in 68 versus 64, and if you're playing on Thursday or Friday, I think it means a little bit more. And the fact that we have conference champions playing in Dayton, it's one of my least favorite things about March Madness. And I think if they go to expansion, one of the very few positives I've heard about expanding the March Madness tournament is that those play-in games would only be at-large teams, which I think would be a huge win for college basketball. I'm against expansion, but the fact that these conference tournament games or these conference tournament champions are playing in the first four games instead of playing in the first round, I don't like it at all.
I agree with Jacob in the fact that if you win your conference tournament, you just get into the tournament, into the regular field. Saying that, they absolutely count as wins. I count them as wins. If I was UC this year, I would have thrown a parade had we won a first four game. Yeah, I would have got onto the light poles and they would have had to grease them up because I was coming to all the light poles in Cincinnati and I would have thrown a celebration. Because it matters. It's fun. It's a fun little time to win a first four game. Not to mention, Jacob, having a standalone March Madness game, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like
playing the tournament.
Well, sure, but this is the tournament.
I don't think so. I think it's a tier below.
Jacob, the flu got to his brain.
Reed and I got in an argument about this last year.
Here's the deal. So 2 years ago, Wright State, they win the Horizon. They get the 16 seed, so they have to play in the first four. And people in the Dayton area are upset, like that's so disrespectful. Why does Wright State have to play in the play-in game? This, that, the other. And I actually think it's cool as hell for a lot of the reasons Elliot just said. The NCAA tournament tips off at the University of Dayton Arena. It's been doing that since 2001. 2011 is when it really branched into this first four format, if you will. But Wright State was the standalone game 2 years ago. It was the only game on out of the whole NCAA tournament. And then they got their first win in program history. If I'm a 16 seed, I would love to be in the first four because you at least have a realistic shot at getting an NCAA tournament win rather than, congratulations, you win your conference tournament, now go get your ass kicked by Duke. Now you could at least have your cake and eat it too. Now you can go beat a team, have a chance to go get an NCAA tournament win on an NCAA March Madness branded floor in the NCAA tournament. The schools, by the way, when you win, you get the NCAA payout. So it's all a part of it. I would much rather, if I'm a 16 seed, I actually feel worse for the 16 seeds that don't have to play in the first four because they have no chance at winning their game, at least the two teams tonight. What did I say earlier? So St. Francis, Alabama State, these two teams normally send them off to play Duke, send them off to play Houston or one of the one seeds. Now they have a chance to beat one another. What?
Wait a minute. They have a chance. We've 2 times they've had a chance.
2 times in the last what? 5 years?
2 times. I'm just saying they've got a chance, and not to
Who was
mention
the other 16? I thought it was just once.
It was UMBC it's Farley and Farley Dickinson.
UMBC Farley Dickinson.
Okay, fair enough.
So there's a chance, and not to mention there's more 15 seeds that are winning than ever as well. So I'd argue that you have, I
saw there was a 48% chance a 16 or 15 seed won.
Really?
Since 2020 or something like that.
See,
but, I mean, shortening the pool, but yeah, it's more and more likely.
I love that.
I mean, Oral Roberts ended Ohio State's basketball program.
They did. I can't tell that story actually right now. The best part of this tournament is the upsets in the first round. Everybody knows this, and I do think, to Jacob's point, being able to be in that field and have the shot at I know obviously you can win your first four, but just getting straight in and having the opportunity to upset a 16 or a 15, that's what this is all about. I absolutely love it.
But it tips off tonight again, University of Dayton Arena, first four. So tonight, the very first game, Alabama State, St. Francis. And people will fill up the arena. They're going to get that big-time tournament feel. And to be honest, that's the other point about this. St. Francis and Alabama State, they're going to get a better tournament experience playing in front of so many fans tonight, as opposed to when they go play Duke or whoever in the first round. Everyone's skipping the 16 versus 1 matchup, or they don't feel the urgency to hurry up and get to the arena to watch the 16 versus 1. How many times you turn on the TV on Thursday in the first round for that noon game, for those noon games, and half the arena is empty because there's no urgency to go watch the 16 versus 1. So who knows? But either way.
Mousecop brings up an interesting point, Kenner, and I didn't know this. For what it's worth, you get a unit every game you play. If you win, your conference gets a quote-unquote unit to which the NCAA pays the conference a certain amount.
Yeah, that's why I said earlier, when you win the tournament game or when you win the first four, it counts as a tournament win. It's the payout's the same. So, yeah, he's right. The other thing I found interesting about those units that are paid out, so Wright State won their tournament game a few years ago. The Horizon League will not get that money for another couple years. It's like a delayed payout. When Butler left the Horizon, the Horizon didn't benefit from Butler's, back-to-back Final Four runs until about 4 or 5 years later. The payouts are delayed. Not delayed, but they don't come to the conference until 3 or 4 years later. I don't get it. I don't understand that, but that's just how it rolls, at least for that mid-major cup. Yeah.
Do you think Alabama State is going to carry the loss to the University of Cincinnati tonight in their game against St. Francis? Do you think that's going to be with them as a little chip on their shoulder?
If they make the tournament, it'd be so funny, and you didn't.
They did make the tournament. They're in
the tournament, Jake.
They're in the tournament.
Maybe if they win tonight.
Oh, that's so silly. That's so silly.
So do you consider, in the NFL, is the wild card round part of the playoffs? Because that's basically
it's a round of the playoffs. It's in the bracket.
So
this isn't in the bracket.
This is the round. This is the round.
It is in the bracket. That's why you got to turn your bracket in by 2.
It's a little cutie playing game. I don't count the
play-in.
The play-in tournament for NBA doesn't count to the playoffs.
He's right about that.
It's two different stat pools.
He's right about that. That's actually fair. That's actually his best point because that does not count for the NBA playoffs.
Headlines
I won't
coming
count
up. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. We'll have more of the tournament coming up later on in the show. But yes, Elliot, I did get a kick out of it. I was bummed I couldn't be on yesterday with everything I had going on, but I did want to get your take on Cincinnati accepting the bid to the Crown tournament. Obviously,
did they accept it? Or you can't decline.
Well, I think it's I imagine. I don't know how the mob.
They were told.
I don't know how the mob works, but I imagine in the mob, when you're asked to do something, you just probably do it.
I just, like I said, it'd be one thing if the Crown tipped off this week along with the NIT and the NCAA. Whatever, fine, roll out the ball. But look at how the morale for the Bearcats was to close out the season. Now you got to keep them motivated to practice for another 2 weeks before you play again and possibly just one more game. I think this is the dumbest thing. I like the concept. I think that the field is better than the NITs, the bigger teams and stuff. But the bottom line is I would be surprised if half these teams even could field a roster 3 weeks from now. I don't understand how this is going to pan out. I don't know how anyone that was in charge of putting a plan for this together thought it was a good idea. I don't mind if it would tip off this week. I think you could convince some of your guys, hey, let's we didn't have the season we wanted, didn't have the conference tournament we wanted, but we have a chance here. Let's go win a game or two, and let's kind of close this season out with something to feel good about heading into the offseason. But 3 weeks to keep these guys motivated to come play in a meaningless tournament, I don't see it. I don't see how the Bearcats or anyone keeps a full motivated roster for the next 2 or 3 weeks. But we'll see. But
is there a requirement for like number of players?
You have to have 7. You have to have 7 scholarship players on the roster.
Okay. So that at least means some guys are sticking around, maybe?
Maybe. I guess. What a joy.
All right. What if they add, again, the portal? What if you just go start adding players from the portal and say, all right, suit up?
Just play them in the ground?
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
There was questions about that for the bowl games for football, the teams that obviously don't make their conference championship game, players start jumping in the portal right away. People start adding players from the portal. Are they eligible to play in these meaningless bowl games? I mean, that's a good way to get people to tune into these meaningless bowl games. Let's get a little taste of what the new players look like for next year. But either way. All right, let's go. Again, we didn't kick off with headlines like we normally do, got distracted. But let's kick off the second segment of the show with Elliot's headlines when we come back. We're off the bench when we return. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett, Casey McAllister in the producer chair. We got a lot to get into here today. We opened up again the first 4, everyone filling out their brackets. By the way, I told you about my buddy who hadn't sent the pool out yet. I won the argument. He just sent the pool. So for everyone needs to get their picks in by tonight. So there you go. But I know a lot of people that don't operate that way. They feel like they have till Thursday at noon to get those picks in. But yeah, either way. We'll get back into more of that coming up later on in the show. We got some red stuff. We're going to have more Bengals reaction to Tee Higgins, Jamar Chase. What about Trey Hendrickson? How is the signing and the extensions of those two going to impact the spending of the Bengals moving forward, not just this season, but in the upcoming seasons? We'll get to all of that coming up around the corner. But let's roll with Elliot. Elliot's
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
Oh, God, no. I think my head would explode.
I think you should burn that whistle, actually.
You think so?
I said yesterday on the show, I think it's a hazard.
I watched yesterday, and I don't know that there's ever been more of a whistle day than yesterday. And it didn't get whistled.
Well, to be fair.
No one wanted to touch it.
Yeah, it was your mouth on it. So
but I wasn't sick the last time I whistled.
Yeah, I think you were, but that's I guess that's where we'll disagree. I think you were. We'll go to headlines here. The Reds, they've lost 7 straight spring training games. Shutout by the Guardians, 3-0 yesterday. CES had the lone base hit for the Reds. It was a double, so good for CES. Andrew Abbott, 3 innings, 2 earned runs, while striking out 2. Spires, 5 innings, allowing 1 run, striking out 2. So, I don't know. Spring training. We'll see you tomorrow. It's tonight. I don't know when they play next. Tonight. See you tonight. The Cubs, they lose 4-1 on opening day, as Casey kind of gave the clue about. 4-1 on opening day this morning, I think at 2 a.m. We got the text from Reed. I don't know what time that was.
He was up. He was tweeting at 5 a.m. this morning. I think it was a 6:10 or 6:20 first pitch time or whatever. But I saw he was up early tweeting and watching his team. So
it was early. It was early for opening day this morning. The Cubs get a big fat loss. Ohtani. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I thought you were moving on from that game, but when you're done with the stat line, I got more on that game real quick.
Okay. Ohtani, he got a double, an additional hit, 2-hit day for Ohtani. Yamamoto, 5 innings of 3-hit, 1 earned run, striking out 4. Shota, he tossed a hitless 4 innings, for what it's worth. Did walk 4 batters, struck out 2. But that is your box score recap.
Do you guys like the Tokyo? Is that what it's called, the Tokyo series or whatever it is? But that's what obviously the Dodgers and Cubs played in this morning. I see so much negativity on social media saying typical baseball missing the mark. It's the week of March Madness, NFL free agency, and then they have their opening day game at 6 a.m. on a random Tuesday. I'm like, but we weren't the target audience for this. I think baseball is trying to obviously globally grow the sport. This game was more about the global audience than it was just here in the States. And by the way, I guarantee you, just like our guy Reed, Cubs fans, Dodgers fans, everybody was up. It's probably easier for Reed to get up at 6 a.m. versus Dodger fans at 2 and 3 a.m. for them over there. But I just don't know why we got to complain about everything. I don't think it's that big a deal. I think it's kind of cool. They're trying to connect with the global audience, use their global superstars, obviously like Shohei Ohtani and others. And we had 2 Japanese superstars today that were the headline of that matchup. So I have no problem with it. You don't want to get up and watch it, don't get up and watch it. But let's not act like because one game of 162 for 30 teams in baseball playing at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, a week before the real opening day, I don't think that's killing the sport. People overreact as usual.
Well, here's the good news, and let's go right back to Jacob's take. If I was a Cubs fan and I lose this series, I lose it 2-0, it doesn't count.
At all.
It's as if we didn't even play it. This is spring training. If the Cubs missed the postseason by a game and a half,
I would call Manfred myself.
Yeah, they got screwed. They got absolutely hosed. Now, if you win it, it counts. But if you lose it overseas at 3 a.m., that game never happened at all. You might as well throw that whole thing away. But yeah, I mean,
but it did happen.
But it did happen.
Lost.
It did happen, and the Cubs did lose.
That's right.
But if I was a Cubs fan, it certainly wouldn't have existed. Moving on here, again, not a ton of headlines today. Moving on, the NBA, the Lakers, they blow out the Spurs 125-109. Luka 21-9-14, still healthy. And again, I mentioned it yesterday, but because Jacob's here, I like to kind of make fun of the Cavs or Mavericks every time I can. The Mavericks might not have enough healthy players to finish the season since saying they prioritize health.
Yeah, they're out of games.
Yeah.
They're running out of games.
Yeah,
Anthony Davis is getting like a rehab start with the Texas Legends, which is the Mavericks G League team.
Funny enough.
I haven't seen NBA teams do that often, like baseball, where you send like Hunter Greens to the Dragons or something for a rehab start. But yeah, he's going to go play with the Texas Legends for a game or two just to get back. So
NBA Centel, famous parody account, tweeted that Anthony Davis was joining the G League team 2 days ago.
Oh.
And then the Mavericks announced yesterday that he was for a rehab assignment. So their jokes are so realistic and the Mavericks are so bad that they're just starting to break news.
You made me nervous. When you brought up Centel,
No.
Okay. I was like, oh, did I do it again? I was like,
by the way, the Mavericks hilariously still hold a playoff spot. So
yeah, because 20 out of 30 teams make it.
Correct.
What's the Bulls' record? I'm pretty sure they're in the playoffs in the East. The Bulls are atrocious.
The Chicago Bulls are 10 games under 500. They are not the last team
They're
out.
like comfortably in the play-in.
They're in by I think 5 games. Yeah. So unbelievable.
They're playing in the
taking
first.
Away all their good players.
Unbelievable. Continuing on. The Nuggets, they take care of the Warriors without Jokic, 114-105. Quentin Grimes, he dropped a career-high 46 in a losing effort in overtime to the Rockets. Sixers fall. The Pacers, they win in overtime as well over the Grizzlies, despite Desmond Bane's 44-point performance. So a couple great performances and losing efforts yesterday. Moving over to the NFL, Derek Stingley, 3-year, $90 million deal with the Texans, and Azeez Ojulari, a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Eagles, a guy the Bengals were maybe possibly targeting.
Yeah, not a lot else happening in the NFL, sadly. Obviously Tee Higgins, Jamar, great news, but Bengals have a long way to go. You'd like to see some more signings. Aziz was one of the younger, more reliable edge rushers left out there. We've talked about how the positions of need for the Bengals started to, fall pretty quickly because edge rush and interior line's a position of need for basically everyone. Yeah. So Bengals have not been able to address those needs yet, and those options are going fast. It's frustrating to see the Eagles swoop up multiple of those options we circled. They signed Josh Uche a couple days ago. They signed Aziz last night. I mean, they're just replenishing their edge rushers they lost with the edge rushers that we circled that would be good to sign. So that's why they're perennial contenders.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, college basketball news, not related to March Madness, but related to the other tournaments, the CBI or whatever that's called, and the NIT. I mentioned it on yesterday's show. They gave a bid out to UC Riverside, the NIT. Here's the issue. UC Riverside was unaware. They didn't know they were in that one, so they accepted the CBI or whatever it was called. Well, then they said, all right, since they're not coming, we're going to go invite South Alabama. South Alabama then gets kicked out once Riverside goes to the NIT. So now we've got a team who was offered the NIT, and then it was redacted.
Can't redact it.
You can't redact it. The NIT released an apology. Quote, after the NIT bracket was released Sunday evening, it was brought to the NIT's attention that one of the teams scheduled to participate in the tournament had also committed to a non-NCAA affiliated postseason event. In an effort to secure another participating team, the NIT prematurely extended an invitation to the South Alabama Jaguars prior to learning that the original team chose to accept this invitation to the NIT. Regrettably, the NIT rescinded its invitation to South Alabama. We understand the emotional impact this confusion created, and we sincerely apologize to South Alabama. Head coach, I believe Richie Riley, came out and said, it was a meaningless apology to the most meaningful group of players I've ever had. Absolutely brutal. I also don't understand why the NIT couldn't be just like, all right, you guys just get to be the 33rd team. Or whatever. I don't know how many teams are in there now.
You should give someone a bye?
Yeah. I mean, it's the NIT. Who cares what they do?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Give 6 buys.
You're
Make
right.
it up. Make it up. Whoever comes in last wins the thing. It doesn't even matter what happens in that tournament. So, yeah, I think that's absolutely outrageous and a shame. A once proud NIT brings absolute shame to itself. Disgusting.
I think one of the other tournaments, your tournament, the Crown, kind of dropped the ball this weekend, too, in their first year of existence.
Tournament.
It's not called Selection Monday.
Okay.
Why did they put their bracket out on Monday? Every other tournament puts it out on Sunday.
I don't know. They won it on FS1, the big show. I know NIT lost their TV privileges for that show. They usually the NIT selection show is usually always late at night Sunday. I think they did it on Instagram Reels. By the way, the bracket for the Crown, I believe the first set of games happen on March 31st. You have, I believe, it's Utah, Butler, George Washington, Boise, Nebraska, Arizona State, Georgetown, and I don't know who that is down there. Oh, well. Moving on April 1st, April Fool's Day, the Bearcats take on DePaul at 3 p.m. Eastern. 3 p.m. Eastern on a Tuesday, April 1st.
What if that broadcast opens and Wes Miller's like April Fools?
That would be funny. That would be funny.
Sick, and they just roll the crown.
That would be very funny. Who will get the coveted crown and the $300,000 glory?
Is the trophy a crown?
If it's not a crown,
at least the MVP trophy has to be a crown.
It should be what it should be. And Paul brought it up yesterday. It will be. In fact, on April Fool's Day, I will wear it. It's going to be the Burger King crown. I'm going to wear the Burger King crown.
Yeah,
that should be the sponsor. That should be the number one sponsor.
That's a good plan.
It just makes too much sense.
It should be.
So there's that. I don't know if you guys saw this. So West Virginia obviously is kind of the sentimental team that everyone feels bad for. How did they get left out of the tournament? How did North Carolina get in? How did West Virginia get left out? And I sympathize with West Virginia on Selection Sunday. I felt bad, just like when Florida State got left out of the college football playoff a few years ago. I initially sympathized with it. I felt bad initially when UCF years ago goes undefeated. Obviously, they beat Auburn in a bowl game. They got left out of the playoff. I sympathized with them initially up front, but then how they acted after these types of things, it totally changed how I viewed him, and I no longer felt bad for him. I no longer felt sorry for him. I didn't feel sorry for UCF doing the national, declaring themselves national champions. I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, the Florida State thing, I mean, the temper tantrum that they threw, I mean, it bled all the way into this past season and just literally made them one of the worst teams in college football after being on the cusp of making the playoff last year. I don't sympathize with them for the tantrum that they threw. And then West Virginia. I'm having a hard time having a lot of sympathy for them. I don't know if you guys saw this, but West Virginia's governor is now taking legal action against the NCAA selection committee of leaving the Mountaineers out of the tournament. They called it the National Corrupt Athletic Association. Put my team in or I'll sue you. That's the precedent we're setting over there with the Mountaineers. How do we feel about the Mountaineers' temper tantrum?
Whoa. Based on your tone, it sounds like you're against this.
Yeah. What?
Ridiculous.
They were crying. Every bracket matrix had them in.
Also,
150 of them all had West Virginia in. They didn't get in because North Carolina.
You make fun of all these guys like weeks heading into this?
No,
yes, you did. You made fun of all those guys.
No, just because North Carolina's AD, who leads the committee, wasn't in the room.
He left the room. Guys.
He closed his eyes. He closed his eyes when the decision was made. I'm sure that's how that conversation went. Just because he decided to leave him out doesn't mean I can't get my governor to sue.
I love it.
I'll sue whoever I want.
Yeah.
If it doesn't go my way, if the Reds don't make the playoffs, get DeWine on the phone. I want Major League Baseball sued. That's what I want. I love this for West Virginia. They should sue everybody. They should sue individual teams that took him out.
I love that college football and college basketball, college sports are more or less subjective because you can just sue. You be like, you're wrong. I should be in. I'm going to sue you. Florida State tried to do it. Now West Virginia's trying to do it. I love it because if you're West Virginia and you got one of the worst wrongs maybe in the history of March Madness in terms of the committee leaving someone out in favor of another team, people only care about this for what? 72 hours max?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So wring that towel out. I mean,
we're
going to be talking about National Corrupt Athletic Association a lot longer than we're going to be talking about West Virginia being snubbed.
Yeah.
So this is going to keep them in the forefront. I mean, it seems like they're going to lose their coach, DeVries, already, too, to Iowa. At least it's trending that way. So it's going to be a rough couple weeks for West Virginia. I don't fault them for trying to get a little bit of enjoyment out of this whole thing. I think this is more just trying to it's a different story if their governor actually thinks that, the commissioner of the committee or whatever is going to be like, all right, North Carolina, you're done. West Virginia's going to be playing tonight. Like, that's not going to happen. If that's what they thought was going to happen, if that was the end goal, I have a different tone. I have a hard time believing that's the end goal. I think it's fun. I like making a stink about something when you feel like you're wrong.
Suing is fun. I love it. Yeah. I just got to kick
He went live on Twitter for an hour.
I'm all for it. I'm absolutely all for it. West Virginia, 19-13. They have a net ranking of 51. You had Boise State, who had a better record and a significantly higher net ranking, and West Virginia is the one threatening to sue over being left out. They didn't even have the biggest gripe of the teams that were on the first four outline, in my opinion. But,
West Virginia?
Yeah.
Who has a bigger gripe than West Virginia?
The net ranking for Boise State was at 44. Ohio State's at 41. They were at 51. Not the end of they're 19-13. It wasn't even the sexiest of records.
I think a team that's in the tournament, and we have audio for it, so I guess we can maybe touch on it a little bit next segment. I think there's a team in the tournament that has a bigger gripe than West Virginia, who's just not in the tournament altogether.
I think the team you're referencing and West Virginia are the two teams that got screwed the most.
I agree.
All right, let's discuss. So that's a good tease. So we'll pick up on that when we come back. More Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, next.
Welcome on in. ESPN 1410 Wing AM. Off the bench. Chatterbox Sports.
ASMR segment?
I'm going with the softer tone.
Okay.
I'm going with the softer tone. Elder High School legend, Pat Kelsey, the head coach of the Louisville Cardinals. I believe firmly, and Michigan's going to have an argument as well. Michigan's going to absolutely have an argument to say they got screwed because they played their championship game a minute before the bracket was revealed.
Yeah, I was going to say they didn't get screwed. CBS gives them a lot of money for that slot.
I guess. Saying that, and we talked about it with Paul a little bit yesterday, and Paul alluded to this audio bite that we're about to play. Pat Kelsey visibly, I guess audibly, not happy with the committee's decision to make him an 8 seed. Again, no team in the last 15 years ranked as the 13 overall team in the country has been worse than a 5 seed. Nobody. The Cardinals are an 8 seed. Now, they do play in Lexington for the first 2 games if they were to win. But it's still an absolutely outrageous thing that happened with the committee. So this is Pat Kelsey, elder legend, on being kind of screwed over a little bit.
I can't believe I'm saying this about my rival, the Louisville Cardinals. I think you're underseeded. You may not want to say it, and I get it if you don't, but I feel like you deserve better than an 8 seed. What do you think?
Man, so first of all, I just want to say how fortunate we are and excited we are about playing in the national tournament, representing our school and our city. I'll be completely honest with you. Like, when we're watching the selection show, it was like when that popped up, it hurt a little bit. You felt slighted a little bit. It is what it is at this point. You have the advantage of no choice, but, in my opinion, we should be playing a 12 or 11 seed. Every metric under the sun that you look at and all the experts, net 23, which would put us in, a possible 5 seed range. Ken Palm 23. Heck, fellas, you're a Kentucky fan. Since that December 14th game, that's 3 months ago.
Yeah.
3 months. We've lost 2 games. We went 18-2 in the ACC. We went to the conference championship game and lost to the number 1 team in the country. So it is what it is. If anything, to a competitor, or to our guys and to me, it puts a little fire in your belly and gives you just a little added little chip on your shoulder. But, we have to do a great job in preparation over the next couple of days. Obviously, Creighton is an explosive team, a dangerous team, extremely well coached, as you guys know, and we're excited about getting to work.
I don't get it. And shout out to KSR for that interview. I don't understand what the logic was for seeding them that way. Clemson got the 5, and people disagreed with Clemson getting a 5. How does North Carolina get in then? That's the part of it where you can't be that inconsistent with these decisions. It has no logic. I think that when you look at the ACC, sure, is it an absolute powerhouse like it was when Coach K and Roy were there, and Notre Dame had a program there for a little bit, like Syracuse, Boeheim, like there were teams in there that made the ACC a juggernaut about a decade ago. But now it's completely different. The ACC is not what it was. I just don't know how you give the blue blood a seed just because they're a blue blood. Like, that's the only reason North Carolina's in. We all agree. That's because they're named North Carolina. I
actually disagree with the brand argument of it. I think whoever the head commissioner of the board is, it doesn't matter if they're a blue blood or not, their team's going to get in if they're on the bubble. If Boise State's AD was in Buddy Cunningham's seat, Boise State would be in over North Carolina.
Yeah.
That's my argument. I think the biggest thing is just it's the guy on the committee made the decision. I don't think it matters who the brand was. It obviously hurts in this sense that it was North Carolina. Everyone's going to say it's the blue bloodism, and I'm sure that's why they put them in. That's the argument that they used. But I think it all just does boil down to their AD's in charge of the system.
Yeah, I just think, and again, the final AP poll came out too yesterday. The final AP poll has Louisville as the 10th best team in the nation. The 10th best team in the nation. I know they don't do the AP poll for seeding, but if you just did it by that, they're a 3 seed. So what are we doing here? They're a 3 seed, and by the way, Clemson would be a 3 seed too. They they finish at 12th in the AP poll. So I think I don't understand it. I don't fully grasp what happened. Wisconsin finishes 13th in the AP poll. Michigan finishes 14th. I guess a little shot across the bow on that one as well. I don't know what the deal was for the seeding of this tournament. It felt like it didn't make sense from the beginning. When they announced Louisville as the 8, I audibly gasped. And I think you saw that they had the camera on the Louisville team. Like, nobody was there was, I think, one player that was clapping. Outside of that, they were all just visibly shocked at what
Where did you think they should be? I'm not saying that they're wrongly seeded. I'm just saying, like,
they should be a 5.
About a 5? Okay.
A 5 is the lowest, but I think they could be a 4. I mean, I think a 5 seed was probably what I would have had them at. And the fact that they're not, I think that's crazy.
I think they should be way less mad than they are. I mean, they got thrown a bone playing in Lexington. I don't care what seed you are. You get to play your first 2 rounds at home. That is worth everything. I think I might rather be an 8 seed and play at home than be a 5 seed and play in Seattle or wherever. I mean, if you're Louisville, you've been to the tournament in 6-7 years, and you get to play in your backyard. I mean, that whole arena is going to be Louisville fans. I think that's going to be an incredible place for them to play. I have them going on a little run in my bracket. I know that means nothing because I'm going to be lost in the first week or so. But yeah, I think Louisville, did they get screwed on metrics in their season and their ranking based on where they're seated? Absolutely. There's no way around that. I also think that it's fine because they're in Lexington. If they weren't in Lexington, it'd be a different story.
I just think it comes down to when do you want to play a 1 or 2 seed, and you get to play a 1 seed as your reward for having a fantastic season and winning the ACC. So
that's fair. That is fair.
Like I don't get it. I really don't get it.
I think
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Some of the complications too, because there was 14 SEC schools in there, and they do their best to prevent SEC. They try to do their best to spread out those schools so that you don't have conference matchups right away, and even try to avoid some of them in the second round. There's so many variables that go into how they place these brackets. I think the 14 SEC schools created a problem for how they went about trying to create some of those paths to avoid an SEC tournament vibe. the first two rounds of the tournament.
They screwed that up, by the way. How do you end up with Florida and Auburn on the same side of the bracket?
Yeah, I don't
know. When would be the earliest they play? Is it the
Final Four? Florida and Auburn? Yeah. But how do you not have the top 2 SEC teams as 1 seeds on opposite sides of the bracket?
I see. Okay, yeah.
Figure it out. Like, if you put Florida at 2 or 3, no one would have batted an eye.
Yeah.
No one would have batted an eye after the SEC tournament they had. And you put Duke or Houston at the 3 and 4. There is zero rationale to me why, if you think the SEC is the best conference in basketball, you think they're as good as they were this year, and you do by putting 14 teams in, you're saying they're as good as everyone says they are. Then how do you put the top 2 teams in that conference on the same side of the bracket?
Nah, it makes no sense.
And they said they were looking at that too.
It makes no sense.
I really don't get it. I don't understand it.
And I think we always usually have like some gripes with the committee. Sometimes it's about like leaving teams off, like St. John's and Seton Hall last year. Left off the bracket, and I think a lot of people thought they should be in. I don't remember a time where seeding was this off. Like I
feel like people are more mad this year about seeding than ever.
Yeah, like I don't remember a time where this much discrepancy with the seeding has come into play.
Which, and by the way, because college athletics have always said too, if you take a non-sports fan and have to explain to them the dynamics of college athletics, they would look at you and say, there is nothing about that makes sense. If you would describe the NFL to them, they would understand it. Everyone's under the NFL umbrella. Everyone operates to the same rules. There's a clear-cut path to how you make the playoffs, how you win a championship, all of those things. If you try to explain to a non-sports fan how crowning champions in college athletics works, if you try to convince them that, hey, Northern Kentucky is Division I, so is Duke, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. It doesn't make any sense, right? Like, so with that being said, like I don't think there's a clear-cut way to crown a champion in a fair manner whatsoever. But when you look at the college football playoff format and the NCAA tournament, and you look at the human element that is involved in how they, obviously build these brackets, if you will, which one's more flawed? Is it the 12-team playoff and the human element there, or is it the human element with this, the placement of these 68 teams in the NCAA tournament? Which one's more flawed?
I think it's distantly college football because you at least give all your conferences a chance to play. I mean, what was the whole issue with the 14 playoff? They built a system that innately left out one spot. We had 5 power conferences in college football, and they built a system with 4 spots. And then they expanded to 12, and we're still arguing a ton. The discrepancy in college basketball for schedules and records and quality of opponent, they have found a way to measure that. And they have metrics for that, and they compare it fairly well. And for the most part, I think it makes a lot of these arguments useless. I mean, especially when we get to the bubble with most of these teams, you have enough metrics for all of them about, how many quad 1 wins, quad 4 losses, everything along those lines, net ranking, KenPom, all these different stuff that you can use. With football, it's just one guy saying this team's cool, one other guy saying, well, they, lost 3 weeks ago, and this guy broke his ankle, and it seems so much more subjective in football just because they don't have as many metrics. So I think basketball's a better system.
And it's the main difference, too, is significantly less games. When you have an AP poll in college football at the start of the season, you only have 12 weeks or 10 weeks to really change that that narrative. If you're a top 10 team to start the season in college football, that's going to last you most of the year unless you're Florida State. Like, it's going to last you a long, long time just because some group of guys thought that your camp was great coming into this season. And I think college basketball has so much time to breathe where you can figure most of it out. So I think it's way more flawed for college football. And I don't think college football will ever be perfect because of how short their season is. College basketball, you generally feel like the rankings, the seedings, everything leading up to the tournament are pretty damn accurate because of what Jacob just said.
You also play your whole conference.
Correct.
So you actually understand where teams rank within their own conference.
Yeah.
This year, Indiana finished third in the Big Ten. No one in the world thinks they were the third best team in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Like, it's just stuff like that as well.
The reason I ask is because I agree. I feel like basketball has always been just, I feel like their system is, considering the flaws in college athletics as a whole, this is the best format with it. But, there's still flaws with it, and we're discussing those flaws today and pretty much since the bracket came out on Sunday. But, like, the playoff for football, I mean, even going back to the 14 playoff, I don't think that they ever – I mean, when you look at how the BCS model was formulated as well, they said if you even use the computer system, the computer ranking system also put out the same top 4 teams every year of the college football playoff with the 4 teams. Like, they got it right. Every year, the committee got it right. We were still debating that 4th team getting in, but overall, all the metrics still pointed at the committee, the human errors and all, still got it right. It matched that system. Even last year, I don't think a team missed the playoff. I don't think there was a team on the outside looking in that should have been in. People like you brought up, Jake, I agree, like the Indiana thing. We were poking fun at Indiana being in the playoff, but who else would you have put in place of Indiana at that point? I guess more SEC schools or Big Ten schools, whatever. But like, that's just what made that kind of interesting. Football, I think, is actually close to getting it more right than not than college basketball. But, the auto buy for the, conference champions created a little bit of a mess. You saw very uneven paths to get to the championship. Ohio State, of course, won it, but they had the hardest path of any team in the playoff, and they ultimately won the whole thing anyways. But I'm curious, when college football finally irons out some of those kinks a little bit, I think it's actually going to be pretty smooth as far as that goes. Basketball just still feels messy, and I think it's going to get messier, especially if they expand it, because they're going to be doing things that make less sense. You're going to be forcing sub 500. You're going to be forcing barely 500 teams into the NCAA tournament because of the net rankings and the quad 1 and 2 wins and throw out record, while you're going to have mid-major teams that are 27 and 3 or whatever being left out. That's going to be the messier stuff that comes in the future as this thing gets bigger.
100%.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Casey McCollister in the producer chair. We're going to get to Casey and his thoughts on the Bengals. We got Jacob, who is yet to be able to weigh in. He didn't even get to do Chatterbox Bengals while he was out sick. That's when all the fun stuff happened. Jacob, you had to do all the negative news, the trade demands, the the cap or no cap, all the tweets, all that. You had to do all the Chatterbox Bengals shows for the non-fun stuff. The fun stuff happened, and you were on the shelf. But we'll get your thoughts. Tee Higgins, Jamar Chase, the extensions are final. What does that mean for the Bengals moving forward? How will that change how they spend? We'll get your guys' reaction to all of that and more coming up. More Off the Bench when we return. As you guys know, Jamar Chase agreed to a 4-year, $161 million deal that includes $112 million guaranteed. Tee Higgins, 4-year, $150 million extension that is guaranteed for the first 2 seasons. And, of course, that was announced late Sunday night. Even some of the Bengals beat writers were asleep. I mean, they were kind of late to the punch as far as getting some of this information out there. I think it got to a point where we all knew it was going to get done. It was just a matter of when, not if, but the when was starting to become the problem because it seemed to just be taking too long and kind of getting in the way of the rest of the construction of this roster. But for the last 24 hours, it's been positive vibes because now what was a negative talking point of when is it going to get done? Will it get done? Will it get done in July? Will it get done before camp? Will it get done in the middle of camp? Will it be a distraction for camp? All that stuff you could put officially behind you because now you know who your quarterback is for the next couple of seasons, and now you know who his weapons are for the next couple of seasons. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins. I did not think they'd be able to keep that trio together, years ago when this conversation started, but yet here we are, all three. Big-ass contracts, very well taken care of, and that's your core for the Bengals for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's the best news you could ask for. I mean, it's what we've been holding our breath and praying for the last 3 off seasons. This has been everything we've wanted in Cincinnati since we got these guys here. We took Joe Burrow 1, and the conversation leading up to that draft was, is he going to request a trade out of 1 before the Bengals even take him? Obviously, that didn't happen. Now he's here, and he's a legend. He's the best player to ever wear stripes, and you get Tee Higgins at 33, falls into your lap, and you're like, wow, how do we get this lucky? We were replacing A.J. Green with another big body star receiver, and then the next year you turn around and you get Jamar Chase. This doesn't happen to a city like Cincinnati, and then now we're here at the end of the line of their rookie contracts, and we found a way to extend them all, and that was impossible for the last 5 years. I didn't think we were going to get to this day. Obviously, there were points where the optimism swelled and you felt really good, and that was great, but there was never a real general confidence around the entire city that this was going to get done. And I know a lot of people said that they were really confident, but especially this point last year, everyone unanimously was getting ready and gearing up for one last ride with T in a Bengals uniform, one last go at this Super Bowl with this core, and now we don't have to worry about that for 4 more years. I mean, it's a huge weight off Bengals fans' shoulders. It's a huge narrative that we don't have to discuss anymore. And I think it's even bigger than just keeping this core together, which is the most exciting thing for all of us. The Bengals are a franchise. The Bengals are in the NFL, and they're trying to win, and they're signing good players. It's such a massive, massive day in the history of this franchise, in the history of this organization. And, honestly, shout out to Jerry Jones, because we're going to have to sit here for the rest of our lives and realize that the Cincinnati Bengals organization changed in AT&T Stadium. Joe Burrow stepped up to that podium after the Simpsons Monday night game, and he said, we need to re-sign our guys, and they got it done. So, shout out to AT&T, shout out to Joe Burrow for getting it all done, but these guys are here, and they're going to be here for 4 more years, and that's about as exciting as it could possibly get.
Yeah, I think that when I look at the Bengals from a distance, and I take away my Bengals fandom, and I look at them from the outside, you talk about them almost like in my MLB comp to them would be like the Minnesota Twins. I just think that they were always capable of getting to the playoffs, but never really capable of advancing further. They're always somewhat competitive, but they're never going to be that championship level contender. Then you get Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins, and things start to change a little bit. Trey Hendrickson, things start to change, and the franchise starts to change. Once you change the name of the stadium and you start the Ring of Honor, and you're starting to see little internal changes that you'd never seen before as a Bengals fan, you knew something was coming, right? And I didn't know the Bengals were going to be capable of paying 2 elite wide receivers $70 million. I didn't think it was going to be
69
possible.
It's not 70. Everyone keeps saying it's $70 million for the 2. It is $69 million for the 2.
Bonk.
They are under $70 million.
Bonk. $69 million, and I think it's a great thing. I know people are going to say, well, now you don't have any money. That's the thing. You didn't think they had any money to do this to begin with. So now, of course, can you be worried about not addressing the defense as much as you would have liked to? I guess. But you keep the offense together. It was always about keeping the offense together in my eyes, because the offense has the 3 franchise players on it. That's just how the Bengals are going to be run. You can not like it, and you can say they can go defensive-minded first. I just don't think that's the strategy when you have a franchise-level quarterback like Joe Burrow is. I don't think that's the mantra, the motto, I guess. Let's go defense instead of offense. the Bengals are going to work on the defense. I firmly believe it. And even if they didn't work on the defense, I still believe the defense is going to be better this year than it was last year. I just don't think I don't think it can be as bad as it was last. I think that was the bottom. I think that was the absolute seller. The Bengals had
two guys we signed to add to the defense didn't play football.
Correct. The Bengals had the sack leader in the NFL. They finished 26th in sacks. Like I don't think that's gonna like get worse, right? I don't think the Bengals can get worse. Trey Hendrickson's going to be a Bengal. Whether or not it's on a deal or if it's just because he has to, he's going to be a Bengal. And when the Bengals play next year, hopefully they'll be distraction-free. That's what I want. I want no distractions. As limited as, like we talked for the Reds, no injuries, no distractions for the Bengals. I want them focused, locked in with the guys that we've got, and hopefully the Bengals can start fast for the first time, seemingly, in the Zach Taylor era. That's what I want, and I think this is a massive first step. I think when I was on with Craig on whatever night that was, nights confuse me now. Whatever night I was on with Craig for Chatterbox. It's morning. Well, whatever morning I was on with Craig to do Chatterbox Bengals, he said it. It's the first step. There's a long process here, but getting those two done were the first step at making this organization what we thought it could be.
Yeah.
And that's where I am right now as a Bengals fan. Take your win. Take this win and move it on to the next day, because there's going to be some things that happen down the stretch that you're probably not going to like. But this one, we love this one. And we're going to take it, and I'm going to take it as a massive win for the Bengals, heading into not only just the rest of the offseason and free agency, but heading into the draft specifically. Now we know what we need. I don't need to draft a wide receiver. I'm okay not drafting a wide receiver in that draft early, because we have T and Jamar. Maybe in the late, I guess, if you want to.
I would say at all, unless we get more picks. We only have 6 picks, right?
Correct. I would say no wide receivers. So I go defense, and I would maybe draft a guard with one of the first 2 picks. That's what I would do if I were the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the one question I'd have for you based off what you just said is the main focus, obviously, for you, and I think for most Bengals fans, and obviously the coaches as well, is trying to get to the season, get to training camp, get to week 1 without those distractions, because that's what has really hurt the Bengals in the past. Obviously, the wide receivers off the table now. It doesn't seem like Trey Hendrickson is moving as fast as we'd like. It's picked up over the last about 48 hours or so, but obviously when we had that trade request get granted, we thought he was going to get moved or extended within a week or so. I mean, those are usually very quick for guys of his caliber, and that hasn't come. Now it's come out that his agent lied about the value in a return for a trade, and there's people that are willing to meet the contract requirements, but they're not willing to meet the draft pick compensation. My question for you, Elliot, would be, what would you do to Trey's deal right now to make sure that he's not messing with that training camp vibe? What's the maximum you would do? Because I think something that is on the table that a lot of people have been throwing out there is a 1-year raise. Bumping at 16 to about 30, roughly a $14 million increase for just 1 year if you can't reach an extension, and that takes a holdout kind of off the table. Would you be willing to do something like that, or would you straight up call his bluff and make him play on 16 and put that $14 million elsewhere?
I would absolutely give him the 1-year extension. I'd absolutely give him not the 1-year extension, the 1-year raise.
Pay bump. It's basically what the Chiefs did with Chris Jones before his extension.
I still don't know if I'd go $30 million, though. I mean, I would give him something. I'd certainly up him from 16, maybe around that 25, 26. Obviously, the market, you'd be lowballing him still, but that's his agent's fault. That's not my fault.
Right.
Yeah, I would absolutely do that to not mess with the vibes. But again, he has no choice. I mean, I want to make something very clear. Trey Hendrickson has no choice.
Part of why I'm asking is if he truly has no choice, and we're not going to keep him here long term, who cares if the bridge is burned?
Yeah.
So save the $14 million. That's why I'm so torn if we get to that point on what to do in that situation.
Again, if you want to give him $30 million for next year, and that saves it, I'm not going to squabble over $5 million.
I also can justify Trey Hendrickson as a $30 million edge rusher next year.
Okay.
My gripe has always been, is he a $30 million edge rusher at 32 and 33, and if you go 3-year extension at 34? Like, that's where it gets really sticky. Paying Trey Hendrickson $30 million to rush the quarterback next year, I think, is a pretty good deal.
And I think our good friend Sean Connor kind of said it in the chat yesterday, and I do somewhat agree. Everybody's fear with paying the 30-year-old edge rushers, he's going to slow down eventually. He's not slowing down next year. Maybe in 3 years, 2 years, and that's kind of what Jacob just said, right? We don't want to give him the long-term deal for $30+ million. But if I had to pay him next year $30 million, I would prefer less than that. But if you have to pay him $30 million for just next year to make him happy, to make the vibes in camp better, I'd absolutely do it because he's not slowing down yet. He's going to slow down. I don't think you can say that the guy who led the league in sacks last year is going to get significantly worse. That's probably not on his table.
My number for Trey changes pretty drastically, like $3 to $4 or $5 million drastically from a 2-year to a 3-year deal with what I'm comfortable giving him. That third year is a huge holdup for both sides because obviously Trey wants that long-term security, but that's also the point where, even the outliers start to fall off at the end of that time frame. So I don't know. I think it's going to get interesting over the next couple of days. It's probably going to get louder before anything gets figured out. You're going to have the agents releasing stuff. You're going to have the Bengals releasing stuff to try to drive up some trade value at the last minute. I don't know. Take everything you read about Trey Hendrickson with a grain of salt if we haven't learned that already. His agent is working backdoor deals as much as anyone else, and the Bengals, they keep everything buttoned up. So if everything that's leaking is probably coming from Trey Hendrickson's camp. So keep that in mind as well.
All right, Justin Kenner, Elliot Ruin, Jacob Tissick, Casey McAllister with you here again with Jacob back today, getting more of that reaction to the news from the weekend that the Bengals finally get the deals done with Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins. And there was a lot of talk. I was one of them that said I don't see how the Bengals can get this done with Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins. Now, a lot of those opinions, because I see there's a warpath on social media just going at everyone that said that there's no way that they can get it done. Saying that they can't get it done, a lot of those opinions came from the structure, the mindset of, well, why would you get that done? Why would you pump $69 million, not 70, as you said? Why would you put $70 million into 2 wide receivers when you have a quarterback as good as Joe Burrow? I mean, the belief is if you have an average quarterback, you need to give that average quarterback as many weapons as possible to elevate that quarterback. Joe Burrow is a quarterback that is super talented, that you've paid to elevate talent around him. Why are you investing those extra millions and millions and millions of dollars into the wide receiver room when Joe Burrow should be able to elevate talent around? That's where some of those question marks and criticisms were coming from. And I think that they're valid. I think those are valid.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to sit here and back down and act like those aren't valid. Those are valid. This situation's a little different. They have a ton of money to spend. If you don't spend it here, where are you going to spend it? If you're going to spend it and add players through free agency, that's great. But for morale, what's the point of being drafted and coming to Cincinnati to turn into a star and then not be taken care of when they spend all their money on outside talent? There's that mindset to have as well. Here's my only takeaway about the Tee Higgins thing. I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying I don't like it. All I'm saying is you got to wait and see. A couple years ago, the Rams traded away every single draft pick you can imagine. And everyone kept saying, this is just absolute, NFL just malpractice. Like, what are you doing? This is just unheard of. No, and that's where the F these picks came from, right? And everyone said, well, if you're going to do it, you better win and have something to show for it. Well, guess what? They have a Super Bowl to show for it. And to be honest, it hasn't really crippled that franchise as much as what you would think. You look at the Eagles, all the money that they keep spending, all the contracts that they keep rolling over. They just gave $20 million, the highest paid running back contract in the history of the league, to Saquon Barkley on a roster with 2 $25+ million a year wide receivers and a 50+ million a year quarterback. And they give that money over to Saquon with all the money that they spend on the defense. They'll deal with that mess at some point, but you better have something to show for it. They have stuff to show for it. The Cincinnati Bengals are doing something different. They're pumping so much money into one side of the ball. And again, I'm kind of questioning it, just like people question the Eagles, people question the Rams. They have stuff to show for the way that they went about doing it. We got to wait and see if the Bengals will have something to show for it when it's all said and done, because right now I think people are questioning it. This is the core that has led you to back-to-back missed playoff seasons. That's a valid point too, but I don't think it's because of Joe Burrow, Tee Higgins, and Jamar Chase. It's the other holes. That's a valid, question too. Last point on this. Here's my biggest takeaway about the Tee Higgins signing. The only thing this has done is it's put the Bengals in a spot where, and I said Tee Higgins because Jamar Chase you had to get done. Tee you didn't technically have to.
Well, hold on. So if you had to get Jamar done, then you did have to get Tee done because Rocky Arsenault, the agent, said that if you're going to re-sign Jamar, you have to get Tee done.
Yeah, which also I would have called Jamar's bluff at some point. I would have called it. I would have, but
see, he can get 160 from anyone. Jamar. I don't.
Oh yeah.
I think he was legit.
I also think that, but see, now you're at the point where, again, have something to show for it, because if the Bengals end up with nothing to show for it and they let the players run everything, because that's what this is going to be viewed at down the line. Now, I'm not saying that now. I'm just saying if this doesn't work, the players will be blamed for, well, this is why you don't let the players be the GM of the football team. This is why you have to be the GM. But to your point, even if you were trying to be GM, what do? You know what I mean? Like, it was an interesting negotiation tactic that we found out that, yes, it was a 2-for-1 special.
Yeah.
You could not get one without the other. But with this Tee Higgins signing, the biggest thing that I'm looking at with the Bengals now is the bad position it's put them in. There's a lot of good positions. The bad position that they're put in, guys, they have to be perfect now. They have to be perfect. Every free agent signing moving forward, the mid-tier guys, you have to hit on them. Yeah. Every draft pick moving forward, you have to hit on them. You can't have $130 million piped into 3 players without any of those dollars being into your offensive line, into your run game, into your defense, into your specialty, wherever else. They have to be perfect. They have to hit on all these things moving forward. And if they don't, this signing will be the blame of it. Whether it's right or wrong, this signing will be the blame for the demise of the Bengals if they don't hit in the draft and free agency moving forward. We'll see what ends up happening when it's all said and done. So like I said, I'm not hating on it. I'm just not loving it the way you guys are, but you guys are fans, so I get that. From a football standpoint, I get why people are being a little critical of it, but it's also pretty cool as a Bengals fan. You have T, Jamar, and Joe locked up for the next 4 or 5 years. That's pretty exciting too. So I don't want to be the guy that's super negative because I think this is a really exciting thing from a fan perspective. I think that's pretty neat.
No, you're absolutely right. The question of why does Joe Burrow, if he's so good, need 2 $30+ million receivers, 2 top 10 paid wide receivers? That's a fair question. It doesn't seem like really any other elite quarterback or quarterback that claims to be elite has that level of weapons in their offense. So I guess, it's fair that people would ask that. My thing would be the main gripe against paying Tee Higgins, right, is now the Bengals have to hit on all their draft picks, like you just said, hit on all their mid-level free agency signings, like you just said, to replace that defense and try to improve that offensive line and everything along those lines. Absolutely. If they let Tee Higgins go, they'd have to hit on all those things anyway and then hit on Tee Higgins or a Tee Higgins replacement. Like, you're just adding another need, and I think the reason why I was so set on the Bengals having to re-sign Tee Higgins is because of my lack of confidence. And if I'm not sure that they're going to get the defense to where it needs to get, then why wouldn't I try to score 40 a game if I know that's an option that's on the table? So I think you're right, but I do think a lot of the arguments that are being used against re-signing T are really just ignoring the fact that the Bengals struggle to draft everywhere. It's not like they would just immediately pick up a replacement for Tee Higgins out there off the street. That's not something that's so easy to come by. So I understand that it's not a standard way to build a championship team, but I feel like it was the Bengals' only option.
The Eagles pay everybody. The Eagles, they have 2 absolute units on offense in Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Like, I don't know why it's such a crazy thing to have an elite offense.
They're both making $10 million less than both of our guys.
True. And by the way, the Bengals could have gotten these deals for lesser. Like, that's the other part of it. You did wait.
Funny enough, Tee Higgins came in right about Jalen Waddle.
Yeah.
He was like 0.6 more than Jalen Waddle, so basically the same contract that Waddle signed 2 years ago.
I do think a lot of it had to do with them working together.
No question.
That's a part of it too.
Yeah.
But my point being that, and Justin made the point, well, if you have an elite quarterback, why do you need to enhance his offensive weapons? My thing is, why would you want to take it away? If you don't have to take it away, if you can pay it. The last 2 years, he was hurt the year before that. And last season was an utter failure. But again, I'm going to make this point until the cows come home. That first game and the first couple of games, I do blame on the Bengals for kind of ruining the vibe sitting into the season. I don't think that was a talent issue. I think that, and yes, the defense was terrible, absolutely terrible. I'm not immune to that knowledge. But the Bengals did not have good vibes coming into the Patriots game week 1. They did not. This year, I'm hoping that's going to be the difference, and hopefully they can change. Because, let's be clear, I don't know how many 50-50 games we lost last year. It felt like we lost all of them, maybe except for the Broncos game.
Felt like it was like a consecutive month and a half. It just was like gut punch, gut punch, gut punch. I think you guys were relieved at the ass kicking by the Eagles because you weren't disappointed in that game.
It was such a sigh of relief.
Yeah. If it happens again this year, Kinner, then yeah, I'm very, very concerned. But I don't think the ball is going to bounce against us every single time next year like it did this year.
Yeah, I mean, we went 35-34 loss at Baltimore, 34-27 loss in L.A. against the Chargers, 44-38 loss to the Steelers, 3 in a row to knock us out of the playoffs. I mean, that's the worst stretch of all time.
Let's pick up with this. More Bengals talk on the other side, because with that, okay, the money's spent now, and they're about to possibly spend even more to get Trey Hendrickson. And now you go from a franchise that has never spent like this before, and not just spent, they've spent money. I've always thought that was an unfair narrative. I've never really looked at the Bengals as being this beyond cheap franchise. I think they're very selective with the money that they do spend, but when they do decide to spend, they fork over money. They're forking over a lot of money right now, but the structure of the contracts are different, and the obviously the way they're doing business with their stars now is different. Is this a new Bengals team, or is this just a couple rare circumstances? We'll discuss that more when we come back. How has the spend on these couple of players impacted how they were going to spend moving forward? We'll get to all of that when we come back. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. A lot of money spent. Obviously, Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins. Forget about the money. The bottom line is they got it done. They kept their stars in Cincinnati, and most importantly, they kept their quarterback happy. There's still one more piece to this puzzle to keep Joe Burrow happy. And by the way, he asked for, Gesicki. He got Gesicki. Tee and Jamar. He got Tee and Jamar. There's one more piece that he asked for, and of course, that was Trey Hendrickson. We'll see if they get that done. But regardless, even if the Hendrickson thing does go south, this is so significant, the amount, the decision that the Bengals made to finally come to an agreement with Jamar and Tee Higgins and their representation, of course, at this point. You now know who the core is moving forward on the offensive side, especially with Jamar, Tee, and Joe Burrow. But it is a lot of money spent into those three, whatever, but it will impact how they spend moving forward. They were very selective with their spending when they had all this cap space, when they didn't have these major contracts on the books. You'd have to think that if they were very selective when they had the resources, it's going to get even tighter, right, moving forward. Like, are you concerned? Again, this is a good thing. I'm not spinning this into a bad, but it's just like any football team or any sport team that's in the contract. Are you guys concerned at all that the team that was making you feel uncomfortable weeks ago before they got these deals done and how they're spending money, are you concerned that this is going to have a negative impact on how they continue spending to keep this roster in championship contention moving forward with these heavy contracts on the books?
I have a little bit of a different take than I think most people, because I think most people just initially jump to, it's going to handicap them and they're going to be operating with one arm tied behind their back. I'm not nearly as worried, because what has been our gripe with the Bengals the whole time? They leave a ton of cap space left over. They only attack mid-level signings. They sign guys that are bargain deals in free agency, and they hope they hit. Well, that's still what they're doing now. They've just been doing it for 5 years when they didn't have to. So they know how to do it. They know how to operate by signing these guys coming off rookie contracts, trying to find diamonds in the rough, trying to find guys that are bargain signings that you can have for cheap. I mean, the fact that they signed Trey Hendrickson in free agency and he became one of the best edge rushers to the point where multiple contract extensions that he's had in Cincinnati are not good enough to his level of play, that's a good spot to be in. As annoying as it is as a Bengals fan to have holdouts and trade requests and everything along those lines, that means you're doing something right. If you get these guys in on deals that they think are massively underpaid after a year or two of overperforming on the field. So the fact that the Bengals have been living in this world as if they have massive contracts to deal with for the last 4 or 5 years, I think that's a huge bonus. Now the thing is, the 1 or 2 big signings that you do make, the Orlando Browns of the world, you can't make those anymore. So those have to come from the draft. You have to hit in the first and second round of the draft because that's the only chance you have to get any kind of star player. Star players don't even hit free agency at valuable positions anyway. When's the last time a 20-something-year-old star guard hit free agency? So if the Bengals want to get one of those, they're going to have to do it in the draft. But we had to do that anyway. So that's what I mean. I don't know how much it really changes for the Bengals because they were never going to go out and sign Nick Bosa in free agency. They were never going to go out and trade for Max Crosby. And they can't do that now. So I don't know how much it really changes. Obviously, it does take some things off their plate, but I think this is where the Bengals have lived for a while, and I think they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think it's going to change a little bit. I mean, it's hard to say things aren't changing when you do something that you've never done before, right? I just don't think it's going to handicap them in a way that everybody thinks, well, the Bengals are dead now.
They're just going to target the same caliber of player.
Correct. Nothing changes except the fact that when you have to pay the big-name talent on your team, they're going to get that done.
Right.
That's the only thing that's changed here. They're still not going out and getting the elite talent in free agency. That's still not going to happen. The Bengals have changed, yes, in the fact that they are keeping elite talent that's on their roster. The only one they should have kept is Jesse Bates. That's the only one. And they didn't. But outside of that one, I think the Bengals have done a decent job recently of keeping that star caliber talent on the roster.
I also think these last two signings, and if somehow they can get Trey done over the next couple days, I think this changes how free agents view Cincinnati as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a big, big difference if you think you can come to Cincinnati and potentially stay.
Yeah.
If they get Trey done, obviously Jamar and T are a little bit different of a situation because they were rookies, they were drafted, they were extended on their rookie contracts. T obviously with the tag, but that's neither here nor there. I think if Trey Hendrickson gets extended as a free agent that came in, outplayed what his expectations were, and then gets rewarded for it, I think that'll bring an influx of guys who are on that mid-level tier, bumping Cincinnati up their list. Because now that you have Jamar and T locked in for 4 years, you have Joe Burrow locked in for however long he wants to be here, I think that gives a sense of security that Cincinnati hasn't had over the last couple of years with Jamar Chase in the wings, and you have Tee Higgins playing franchise tag to franchise tag. If you're a free agent with a bunch of options, why come to Cincinnati? You don't know how this stuff's going to shake out. So now that it's all locked down, and if they can get Trey done and show that they're willing to reward those guys that come in from free agency and play really, really well, I think that'll move them up a lot of lists across the league for guys that are looking to come here. We heard Tevin Jenkins. The Bengals were interested in him earlier in free agency. He was focused on the Giants in Seattle. I think if all this stuff was done beforehand, it might have changed the order of those teams. And maybe we're talking about already having a guard in Cincinnati. So obviously the timeline really hurts, cost the Bengals a lot of money, probably cost the Bengals a couple of free agents. But the fact that we have it done now, it changes everything about this organization and about the free agents that might want to come here. Not even the ones that we can pay. People might want to come to Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah.
Casey, we'll tag you in here too, because I am curious. Like, this is great news about the money they've spent for these players. You concerned that this impacts how aggressive they'll be spending money moving forward? And by the way, Jay, I agree. It's like I don't think they're going to be going. They've never been aggressive in free agency as far as going after the best of the best. They live in that mid-tier range. But again, if you're drafting well and you're retaining your stars, filling gaps with those mid-tier free agents could be those glue pieces, but you need the main pieces, obviously. But, Case, how do you feel about moving forward? Does this make you feel better about how they spend moving forward, or status quo moving forward? They just needed to take care of their current stars.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might have jumped the gun a little bit yesterday in saying that they were I said that they were officially a modern-day franchise. I think they are, like, very close to that, but they've proven that they will pay their own guys, not necessarily go out and pay the top of the free agent market, which they don't need to always do that. I certainly didn't want them to do that this year because I didn't think it was worth it, but I do feel like maybe a lot of fans were expecting them to go out and get like the Milton Williams of the world to really help bolster up the defense and still be able to retain all the guys. Time after it kind of passed, after the first couple of days, it kind of opened up a lot of people's eyes that the market was super overinflated, and the money that they were going to have to spend on Jamar, on T, and now possibly Trey was going to be just a little too much to go at the top end. I do think, though, like, as it stands right now where they're currently at, the Bengals, they don't have a lot of options in terms of what's left out there. I think that right now they've done the bare minimum to have a decent offseason as it stands right now, right? Like, I think that was, like, what we expected. T and Jamar to be done, and then they're working on something with Trey. We don't know what that's going to look like, but this was bare minimum. And they went out and got, a little help here on the defensive line. They added role players, right? The last bit to make it like a full-on successful free agency would be getting that guard spot somewhat figured out. They got 2 spots that are kind of up in the air right now, and they don't really have a guy there that I'm comfortable with going into the season. So they're probably going to use some of their draft capital on that. And, of course, we can talk about the D-line too. That's another spot that is also a little worrisome. But, I think what they did was show a change of heart in terms of like opening up Pandora's box and being able to guarantee money long term. And that makes it to where you want to come to Cincinnati because, like I said, they're a modern day franchise with a franchise quarterback, a Super Bowl roster, right? A Super Bowl competing roster that you feel like you can make a difference and be financially secure. I think in the past, maybe they were lucky to get some of those guys that, they used Joe Burrow's likeness, his prowess, and the Jamar and the Trey, and it's like, hey, you can come here to Cincinnati, Orlando, and still compete for a Super Bowl. And they kind of got a deal on him in the free agent market. You could do that for a lot of guys. And I think that maybe that window had shrunken quite a bit, or that negotiation tool kind of was weakened a bit this offseason until last couple of days after they got Jamar and T done. Because now you can come there knowing that if you play good enough and you prove to this team that you are a cornerstone piece, whether that you're a drafted rookie or you're a free agent coming in, if you can prove that you are vital to this team, they will work on a deal to get you done here long term. And I think that's what I was more excited about, is that they hadn't shown that up until this point. And I'm happy and excited that they've kind of broken out of their shell a little bit and they've dipped their toes into that space. And now that we can say that they've done that, now it's all kind of out there for us to speculate that there's endless possibilities. I think the next step for them is to, and we haven't seen what the structures are yet for both guys yet. We know what the money is. We know what the guarantees are, but we don't know like how much money is front loaded or back loaded. Did they maximize years 1 and 2 for Jamar and T? We'll see. I'm hopeful that maybe we'll see some of those trends sneak in there as well, because if that happens too, we can start to really fully get the picture of them and what they view as fully going in on a season, instead of what we got last year where the going all in was just a franchise tag. Yeah, I wasn't going to cut it. This year feels a little different.
Do you think every franchise would have done this move? Like Kinner said that, not everybody does this type of thing where you bring in 2 superstar talent wide receivers to pair with your elite quarterback. And to be fair to Kinner, it hasn't really happened a ton, if ever. Do you think if other teams were in the Bengals situation specifically this year, you think they would have done it, everybody?
How deeply in the Bengals situation?
The same exact situation, back-to-back.
Ownership, financials?
Everything.
Well, there's no other team like that. There's not a single other team in the NFL like that. So I guess the answer is no.
Most teams they panic and they just go. We saw it with the Chargers and they got Harbaugh. They got rid of all their offensive talent and just felt like for us to ground ourselves, we need to get our defense patched up and then we'll worry about offense later. And I'm not saying that that's the right way. That's just how the most of the league kind of goes, right? Like, so when I say, hey, how other teams do it, it doesn't mean that that's the right way. But again, when you look at how a lot of teams do assess their situation, it does seem when it's time to hit the reset button, let's get the defense patched up first, and then we can add offensive pieces later. The Bengals have done the opposite. They've leaned it, and Elliot, you've been on this since last season, the middle of the season. We were kind of looking ahead, saying, hey, as weird as this sounds, defensively is where everyone's like, that's where they need to improve. But you've been on the train of lean into your strengths. Like, you know what your strength is, rather than weaken that to strengthen over here.
Yeah.
Heavily lean into it even more. And that's basically what the Bengals did, which is something you've been calling for since last year.
Well, the thing about the Chargers, in the example you just gave, is they got a new coach. And I think if the Bengals had a richer owner with much more liquid money, Zach Taylor wouldn't be the coach of the Bengals next year. I think they would have fired him and brought in a new coach. And if that's the case, Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins are not back next year. You're taking it into a relative rebuild. You're fixing the whole offense. The fact that you're keeping this core around is partially because you kept Zach Taylor around. That's the offense he runs. That's the weapons he needs to run his offense. Whether we like it or not, 2 wide receivers are not a necessity for Joe Burrow to be great. They are a necessity for Zach Taylor to be great. Yeah. So I think the Bengals were kind of in a position here where they had to. I don't think a lot of other teams would. I don't think a lot of other teams would handle much of the Bengals stuff the way the Bengals handle it. And the fact that we kind of backed our way into keeping both wide receivers, that's a huge win. But certainly other teams would have extended him earlier.
Yeah, so there's another thing, too, that I wanted to point out. The just more recent Super Bowl winner, the Philadelphia Eagles, they had this roster really planned from the last time they won a Super Bowl, right? I mean, they go in there with a solid defense in 2019 and were able to outpace Tom Brady, right? And I think the idea of them then getting rid of those pieces, right? They trade away Hassan Reddick. They trade away some of these other key pieces that were a part of that core. They lose out on Brandon Graham, right? And they're still able to then turn around and say, all right, well, instead of paying all this money towards the defense, we're going to flip it to the other way, pay our offense, all these key pieces. They pay A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, their offensive line, the quarterback, a running back, a tight end. And they go fully on the idea that we're just going to go super young on defense. And that's what they really accomplished. And I know you have to hit on the draft for that to work. But that's really the mold that a lot of these teams really go for. I mean, even the Chiefs, you look at them, they spent one big contract on defense in Chris Jones. Other than that, they've let their pieces walk. They traded corners. They've done things that we would have thought were kind of like the sign of them tailing off. Well, no, they just use the draft to supplement that talent and get young on defense. Bengals, their biggest mistake was keeping guys that were too old and letting them, like the Sam Hubbards of the world, go out there and not perform and overpay
Casey,
them.
real quick on that. I had a caller call in yesterday, and we got into it about this exact same thing. And the question I had was, and I wasn't saying the caller's wrong, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but you talked about playing older players like Hubbard and others. Are the young players behind them, are we for sure that they are significantly better than the Hubbards and the Bells of the world? Where they
were when they came in.
Yeah,
but like how? And that was around
much better the last 5 weeks of the season. I mean, defense took a huge step.
Without sounding like a hater, which I will sound like a hater, but I don't want it to come across this way. It's general, just conversation back and forth. Look at the offenses that they played. Those were some of the worst offenses in the league for 5 straight weeks. They benefited.
They also allowed 30 points to the Panthers earlier that season. The Giants only scored 7, but they moved the ball pretty easily in that primetime game. The Raiders scored 24. Like, they were allowing bad offenses to score on them earlier in the year. When Jordan Battle took over for Von Bell and him and Geno Stone were back there, Geno Stone moved from, now, bear with me here, the worst safety in football to the 3rd worst safety in football. That's improvement. Jordan Battle was the number 1 safety PFF rookie in terms of run defense grade in the entire NFL his rookie year. He didn't start until the last 5 weeks of the season. He ended up being relatively okay, but I think a lot of the metrics that showed that those young guys weren't necessarily as good as you thought last year is because they waited so long to be put in, and they weren't getting reps in practice, and they weren't getting reps in games, and they were probably being neglected a little bit on the roster as they focused on those older guys. And I think maybe more than anything, it's just optimism from Bengals fans, because statistically, I mean, Kinner, I know you're not a Bengals fan, so I'll ask you, so I'm not asking the echo chamber in the room, what is the percentage chance that you actually miss on this many picks? It can't be high.
Not every single one of those.
Right. So the fact that Dax Hill got hurt, DJ Turner got hurt, Miles Murphy hasn't played, Joseph Osai played for the first time in his career the last 5 weeks of the season, last 7 games of the season, he had 5 sacks. Like, these guys were really coming on at the end of the year. I think that's the main reason Lou Anarumo got fired, is because when he finally got shoved to get to a point where he's uncomfortable and to play these young guys, the defense took such a large step that I think they were like, what do you know your roster? I think they were really confused at the end of the season looking at Lou Anarumo, wondering whether he even knows what kind of talent he has.
Yeah, but that is kind of my point. That's half my point, is that we had that talent possibly behind them in the wings, ready to go. But the other part of it is they spent money on guys that were this mid-tier level player. Sam Hubbard was never the, Josh Sweats of the world. He was never the Trey Hendricksons of the world or, these top-tier pass rushers. He was good. He had a really low ceiling but a really high floor. We spent money on guys like that on the defensive side of the ball, like Jermaine Pratt's of the world.
I would go spend money on another Sam Hubbard right now.
Well, what I'm saying is when it came down to crunch time and we're on the last couple of years of their contracts, when you could have cut them and saved money last year, you didn't, and it suffered. The team suffered because you stunted growth on multiple guys on the team, and it's not the idea that they were the second most paid position group in the whole NFL. The defensive line was for the Bengals last year, and they got nothing out of that group. Hardly anything out of that group. So it's not like paying a bunch of money to the defense is going to fix anything. Like I think there's two philosophies. You can either go all in on defense, spend a bunch of money on defense, and watch it kind of, wither away like we did, or you go all in on offense, where offensive line tends to last a little bit longer. You're going to pay your young receivers. You're going to pay your young quarterback, and you're going to get younger on defense. And I think that's the way that you should go about building your roster. And I think that's what the Bengals are doing. I think the Bengals are doing exactly what the Chiefs and exactly what the Eagles have done, and they hadn't in the past couple of seasons. They spent money where they shouldn't have spent money, and it's cost them.
So Casey, the Bengals are the Chiefs and the Eagles. That's what Casey is saying. Casey, is that what you're saying?
That's the direction that they're going.
I want to hear it. I want to clip it. I want to hear it from your mouth.
That is the direction that they are heading towards.
Drafting, got a long way to go, man.
Drafting a lot of young defensive players.
Got a long way to go.
Now they have to get it right. But they are
right.
actively building their roster like the championship teams are. And the fact that we have people saying that they are not is kind of.
I don't think they're building their roster like most championship teams are. I think they're a massive outlier if they're to win a championship like this.
The Eagles
which is fine. Have something to show for it.
Like
it's more than fine, and I think it's probably their best chance to win one. But they would definitely be a massive outlier to win a championship like this.
I don't think so.
Who else is paying 3 players this much money? Nobody.
There's like 18 other teams right now that are paying
the Eagles
like 40% of their cap to
Not their wide receivers, to O linemen, to tackles.
Yeah, but that's so.
Which is a unique way to build.
Yeah, but they're heading towards that direction is what I'm saying, is that they're spending a bunch of money on offense and getting younger on defense, not spending a bunch of money on defense. They haven't spent a lot of money on defense.
So you're just grouping offense altogether?
Yes, offense altogether.
Okay, that's where my disagreement is, because spending money on the O-line and spending money on the wide receivers is two very different ways to build a team.
Well, there's a lot of rosters, real quick, there's a lot of rosters that have...
There's different ways to spend. You spend a first-round pick on a right tackle. You spend a bunch of money on left tackle. They spent money on guard and center. Like, they've actively tried to put a bunch of money towards those position groups.
Right, that would be the mold. What they're doing right now is not the mold.
But they're not done yet either. Like, we haven't seen what they're going to do in the draft. They could spend a first-round pick on a guard, and I would say, yeah, they're doing exactly.
Which still wouldn't be the mold. The mold is pay your line and draft receivers. That's what the Chiefs did.
Do you think that not spending a first-round pick is like?
That's not money. That's not paying your cap. Extending the line is where the paying two wide receivers $70 million is very unique. Very unique.
For the Eagles' sake, they paid A.J. Brown 28, 30,
right.
And they paid Devontae 25. And then you count for inflation for the cap, the cap going up. No, I'm just saying, like, when they signed those deals before, that was like, what, the same percentage?
So you're just grading these contracts 5 years down the line.
Well, that's what's going to happen in 4 years with Jamar and T, right?
Yeah, I'm grading contracts deals right now.
Okay, well, I'll do more research on that end, because I'm not super confident on what the percentages are.
No one's ever paid two receivers this much money.
As of right now, the cap for those 3 players is only like 30%.
But it's not that it's 3 players. It's the fact that it's quarterback and 2 wide receivers.
That's what I was going to say, yes.
The 3-player thing does not matter. It's the fact that it's quarterback and 2 wide receivers. That is unique. Okay, we're the only team doing that.
I will go back to the Eagles when they signed A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
That's in the past. If the Bengals would have signed our receivers then, it would have been a good job.
No. It matters because when they signed those deals then, the percentage of their cap that they used to spend on a championship roster was X or whatever. That's what the Bengals are doing right now, is spending X on that this year. And then over time, as those deals get better and better, because they're going to get more and more contracts throughout the league, it's going to look like a good deal.
I don't know how anyone could argue that what the Bengals are doing is the mold of the NFL when they're the first team to ever do this with wide receiver contracts. First team in NFL history.
All I'm arguing is that the mold of what we've seen is spending a bunch of money on offensive line, sure, whatever. But the Eagles have spent tight end, running back, receiver, it doesn't matter.
They're
spending a bunch of money on offense and getting young on defense. That's my argument. I don't care about
I guess that's the argument against the Bengals is they spent money on offense in the wrong spot to be competitive. If you look at the teams that have won Super Bowls, that's the argument against the Bengals that people are making.
The other argument too is it's not just that they're spending money at those positions that nobody else has. They're spending money on positions that they don't have holes or issues drafting at. For instance, like you move on from Tee Higgins, the Bengals have always been good at drafting wide receivers. Now, I know you could say, well, look at the Burton thing. Well, maybe pay attention to that red flag more a little bit next time, but I get that too. But like, to go all in on spending on positions that you're good at drafting at, to say, well, we're going to spend money on our wide receivers and we'll just draft offensive line, which they have been historically horrible at, which is ironic considering that the only Hall of Famer that the Bengals have is an offensive lineman. It's the one key position that they just can't get right now. I think, you brought up the Eagles and how they spend their money, Casey, but like they're spending their money at positions that they can afford because they don't have any other holes. The question that people have about the Bengals is you're putting all this money on those 3 players on that side of the ball when you have so many other deficiencies throughout the rest of the roster. Well, or maybe not. Maybe we saw some of those holes get addressed, in the back half of last season.
Yeah, but the thing is the Bengals did spend money on offensive line. Like they've like actively they had Kappa and Carrot.
That was following the mold.
If you were in the building, they would have told you that they had 4 out of the 5 offensive line positions figured out.
One of the most expensive offensive lines in football?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That was the mold. That is the mold. They followed the mold, and it didn't work. So now they're going away from the mold to extend these receivers.
I don't think that's the case. I think they're still going to spend money on offensive line and invest capital, like draft capital, in the offensive line.
Yes. I think that's the only way. One of your starting guards will be a draft pick.
Yeah.
Because you signed these 2 receivers.
But I also think, too, that they can't go into this year. And I'm projecting them to go at least get like a Brandon Sheriff.
Can you give me like Cordell Volson starting guard, like plus 300? Because I'll take that bet with you right now. I'll take yes.
I don't think it'll be a starting. I think Cody Ford would start over him.
I don't. Because I think they'd keep Cody Ford healthy because he can play tackle backup.
That'd be terrible.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I get what I guess I get what you're saying. Like, I guess they could have spent money on some of the offensive linemen this free agency and not signed Tee Higgins. But all
I'm saying is I think you're right in terms of where they're spending money. The only thing is you are just discounting the one argument against the Bengals, which I don't feel like is fair as Bengals fans.
Well, like I said, I think going into it, they thought that they had their offensive line pretty much figured out.
I don't disagree.
And this year may be a little different, and they're still actively, like we've seen reports of them trying to go after Tevin Jenkins.
Yeah, and Sheriff.
So like I think that means that there's a opportunity there that they're still going to into that mold, which I think is the correct mold. Spending money on offense.
Now, if they spent money on offensive line, that's when I co-sign what you said yesterday. When they get these 2 guys done, then they go sign a guard, that's when I co-sign modern franchise.
Okay.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah. And like I said, I was a little too premature, I think, too, because they haven't shown that they will get someone outside of the organization, that type of deals. But, yeah, I mean, I think as of right now, the trajectory of where they're heading towards is the correct way, and I think they've been on that same trajectory for a while now. It's just that guys get older, and you spend money and don't cut guys when you should, or you don't, hit on the draft, and it makes it look worse. So really, it just boils down just hitting the draft, and we're almost there.
I saw someone tweeted that yesterday. I think it was Yahoo Sports tweeted, Bengals have to hit in the draft. It was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You're in charge here.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Shedeur Sanders. No, I'm sorry. That means we're out of time. We'll take a quick break, and then it'll be a touch and end segment when we come back. So we'll be right back. More off the bench when we come back. Elliot did not talk for 13 straight minutes, so I think it's only fitting that in the final 60 seconds on the radio portion of the show, let everybody know that you're okay, that you still have a voice, and that you are still on the show. Elliot, the floor is yours. For
it was like watching a tennis match. Real quick, Thursday at 10 a.m. we will be live at Champions Grill with an E.
Yes.
It's on Work Road with an E. Champions Grill. For those of you who did not get to come to our Bengals show at Champions Grill, come out to our March Madness show. We're going to be there from like 10 to 3, somewhere around there. We will have off the bench that day.
We will be there
Champions.
from 10 to 3. What time do they open?
They open at 11, but Tim, my guy Tim, manager of Champions, he has told me he will open the doors and only open the doors for those of you who are fans of the show.
Oh, wow.
So if you have
nice.
if you have the day off in anticipation of March Madness, the TV situation is elite. Come on down at 10 a.m. The doors will be open and only open for those of you who listen to this show.
Nate says he has to work on Friday. Nate, you should punch your boss in the face because having a job on Friday of March Madness, that's killer.
That stinks.
Luckily, my job that I work on Friday of March Madness is watching March Madness.
That's right. So come on in on Thursday to Champions Grill.
There you go. All right, that wraps it up for us, at least on radio. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Hey, we'll be right back. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button.
All of a sudden, all right, we're back. Justin Kinner, Casey McCollis, Charlotte, Ryan, Jacob Tissett. We're talking about the crown during the break. Like, and this isn't a shot at UC or anybody. I just said it. I want the crown to fail so bad because I just want the people who were in charge of deciding to put a tournament together that starts 3 weeks after the season ends and think that that's a good idea when the transfer portal, when there's players who are wanting to enter the portal now for NCAA teams. Like, that's the thing. Like, I have no clue how they think this is going to work. Guys, do you think there'll at least be one team that has to opt out of this as we get closer just because they won't have a roster? I don't see how that could not happen at this point.
How do they all have a roster?
No, I think most of them are going to play. It's just because they're playing for a cash prize. So I imagine most of these players are financially motivated to. And by the way, I'm not even talking about like the main players. I'm talking about like the seniors in the team or the guys who've just been there for a long time. Any guys on a scholarship that want a chance at $300,000 or whatever that prize is. So there will be most people, I would say. Most of these teams will be playing in it, if not all of them. Even the Bearcats, who might not have more than 7, but I think we'll have the bare minimum. But it is disgusting. I mean, it does suck. I mean, it sucks. I mean, I don't know what their point of making this was. Nobody's going to watch it. I'm certainly not going to watch it. I'm sure we'll have a segment on it, but I'm not going to watch a game in this. This is a joke. But I do think it would be fun right now if we let's pick our there's a lot of time this week to pick our March Madness bracket. So today we're gonna pick the crown bracket.
I'm glad because they play pretty soon, right?
Unfortunately they don't. Unfortunately they don't. There's a long wait for our good crown. But here we go. So we'll do it by a vote. I'll say the matchup will take a four-person vote. That's right, 4-person vote. A tie goes to nobody at just a blank slate.
No one moves on?
Nobody moves on.
All right, I like that.
Here we go. Utah, Butler. I'm going to vote for Utah.
I'm going to rock with Mike Ackley. Give me Butler.
Okay. Kinner?
I'm going to go with the Fighting Thad Matas. I'm going to go with Butler.
Okay. So, Casey? Utah or Butler?
Butler.
All right, Butler advances. Boise State or George Washington?
George Washington has my least favorite player in all of college basketball, Katie Johnson.
Why?
He is the worst. I hate him with every fiber of my being, so Boise State.
Well, I kind of like them now. George Washington.
I'm going to go with Boise, who had a significantly higher net ranking than that of West Virginia, who was the biggest snub of the tournament, apparently. So I'm going to go with old Boise to make a run in this whole thing.
Casey, George Washington or Boise?
Boise.
So Boise
Elliot's over 2.
Damn. Nebraska, Arizona State. I'm going with the Cornhuskers.
What is it? Forks up?
I don't know. All right, Kenner?
I'm going to go with the more likable Hurley brother. I'm going to go with Arizona State in this one.
There we go.
Nebraska or Arizona State?
Arizona State.
Come on, you're doing it for the bit now. I want one of these teams, they're both of them to be eliminated. Is this Washington State?
It is.
Okay.
That might be the most recognizable logo on this whole graphic.
Is it really?
It's at every single college game day, the entirety of history of college game day.
Never seen it. Georgetown, Washington State.
Patrick Ewing's chair that one time was really funny. Give me Georgetown.
I'm going to take Georgetown, too.
To be fair, I know nothing about either of these teams, so I'll just roll with Georgetown.
Okay, Georgetown advances.
I don't know any of the teams so far.
I'll save the Bearcats for last. Tulane. We'll do Tulane versus USC. I'll go Tulane. Go Green Wave.
Tulane, cool colors. But LeBron's son's aura probably still resonates in the USC locker room. I'm going USC.
It's 2 points per game. Casey, Tulane or USC?
Tulane.
All right, 2 for Tulane, 1 for USC. Kenner?
I'll go with USC.
Let's eliminated. Go. No one moves
Both of them eliminated. Colorado versus Villanova. I'll take Villanova.
Yeah, Colorado deserves to lose for what they did to West Virginia.
That's right. And Kenner?
I'll go with the fighting potentially McCronins, Villanova.
Okay, Villanova
Is
advances.
that a thing?
It is a thing.
That's fun.
Oregon State versus UCF. Oregon State versus UCF.
Taco Fall. Give me UCF.
I'll go UCF because of Taco Fall, too.
Man, one of my favorite NCAA tournament games that I was on the edge of my seat was that UCF Duke game when you had, obviously, Taco Fall going up against Duke. That game was unbelievable. I'm going to go with UCF. There's no Taco Fall, but that's the last game I remember watching for UCF. So
UCF's point guard, Mikey Williams, he was like one of the biggest high school recruits of all time. He was a 5-star all the way through. He famously skipped prom to practice at the gym. Then he got arrested for guns and drugs and everything. He's averaging like 5 points
Happens.
for UCF.
Oh, interesting.
Can't have drugs.
Who among us hasn't? DePaul versus Cincinnati.
I feel like after a season of being pissed off that the team is finally going to realize that the coach is pissed off and respond. I'm going to go with Cincinnati in this one, even though I like Chris Holtman.
What if you get a revenge game against Villanova in the Final Four of the Crown?
Nah. Casey?
Storyline.
DePaul to put you out of your misery.
Wait, so you got to take DePaul too?
I'm going to take the Bearcats to eliminate them both. They're both gone. So we got Butler versus Boise. Who advances to the Final Four of the Crown?
Thad Matta.
I'll go Matta as well.
Matta.
All right. Next we go to Arizona State or Arizona State or Washington State.
Arizona State.
Arizona State. I'll ride with Arizona State.
Rocking with Hurleys. They win in March.
Well,
this might be.
All
this
right.
is actually April at this point.
Okay, UCF's already advanced, and so has.
Yeah, the Final Four is April 5th, so March doesn't even
Spring
matter.
game.
All right, so
they're off the spring game.
Our Final Four of the historic Crown Invitational: UCF, Villanova, Thad Matta and Butler, and Arizona State. So we'll go with Butler and Arizona State. Who advances the championship? I'll go Butler.
I'll keep rocking with Thad.
Okay, Casey.
You said Butler, right?
Yeah.
Butler.
All right, Butler. They advance, and then you have what did I say? UCF versus Villanova. I'll ride with Villanova here. Big East.
Kyle Neptune, good coach. Give me Villanova.
Kenner?
No. Nova.
All right, we have Nova versus Thad Matta.
Give me Thad.
I'm going to roll with Thad.
I'm going to go Villanova. I'm going to Villanova. Casey, please pick Villanova so we can eliminate the champion.
Please give Mike Ackley a championship.
Say Villanova.
Give Michael Ackley a championship.
Give Mike a championship.
All right, Butler is your champion of the crown.
Congratulations.
300,000 and a chance at the
No need to
title.
watch.
I would
No
like to
need
be
to
the
watch.
first to congratulate Michael Ackley and the Butler Bulldogs on winning the crown on Sunday, April 6th at 2:30 p.m.
Jesus.
That's right.
You know how many
That's
games
right.
the Reds would have played? But the Reds are going to be like 4-1 or 4-2. Like, the Reds will be 2 series into the season.
The Reds
by
will
the
be
time-
on their second series by the time the crown's a winner.
I haven't had a good night's sleep since the Bearcats have been selected to the historic Crown Invitation.
That was last night.
Correct.
Okay.
The Crown.
Right.
We'll see you in late April. Other than that, Kenner, I think that's it.
Would you rather be in the NIT?
No, those tournaments don't matter. I'm sorry. I know everybody says, well, some basketball is better than no basketball, except for this Bearcats team. No basketball is way better.
It's a weird take for
They
me
should be
because I'm a
punished.
huge bowl game guy. The
Yeah.
ones that don't matter at all. NCAA tournament should be the only tournament.
I agree.
Just if you don't make the 68, see ya.
I agree.
Don't forget the other meaningless ones, the conference tournaments, the money
Yeah, I
grab
was
tournament.
really glad I wasn't here last week. Really glad.
It happened to your team too, and I'm like, I'm gonna just.
It did happen to my team. And I had a hell
Elliot,
of a time watching all those games.
We had the tech issue on Friday, but I had all those bullet points queued up and ready to go, so it was probably a good thing. But
I got
yeah,
sent that
you know?
take, your tweet about the conference tournaments. I got sent that. It probably entered the top 5 in terms of like friends outside of the show, like outside of people that listen to the show, sending me a take from one of you guys, being like, "What the hell is this?" That probably cracked the top 5. I'm serious. Like friends from everywhere, people at school were sending me your tweet. I think I liked it or something, so it got on the For You page, their For You page. But yeah, no, you were getting my group chats had an active Kinner day, whatever day that was.
Yeah, people are usually all about Kinner on social media. It always, he's so great, he's awesome, I love his takes, vibes this, whatever. But clown, boo, all that, Hey, we're out of time, so we'll do it again tomorrow. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Love you.